Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Ghadir. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Fertile Life podcast. I'm very excited today to have Mark Sklar. Mark is a friend of mine who we've done Instagram lives with before. He is what we call the fertility expert. Hi, Mark, and thank you for joining me today.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun conversation, I think.
It is going to be a great conversation. For 19 years, Mark has been helping infertility couples who have been struggling and doing many things in terms of management of male and female hormones and reproductive health with everything that he does and does it incredibly well. He is a true coach and does tremendous amount of work with people around, should I say the world?
Yeah, I mean, Southern California and the world, depending on how they find me.
I would love for you to kind of just let everyone know exactly. I know exactly what you do, but I would love for you to add and let everyone know exactly what you do as the fertility expert. And go ahead.
Yeah. So, I got started with the field of reproductive health in relationship to Chinese medicine. So that's how I got into the field itself. And so locally here in San Diego, I do acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And then I do coach couples throughout the world who obviously can't make it to San Diego, helping them make more sound decisions on their journey and hopefully start to get to some of the root issues that are plaguing them, and really to hopefully find answers and support them on their path to become parents.
For those of you who maybe not know this, but I'm going to start saying Dr. Sklar is a doctor of acupuncture and Oriental medicine, and he was trained at the Harvard Medical School and the Mind and Body Medical Institute, which is great. He's also the creator of some great content, the Fertility TV, marksklar.com, reproductivewellness.com. So how do you have time to do all this? This is a lot of stuff. I'm like barely just surviving doing what I do. And I see like one more thing here, another thing there. Good for you.
I was going to ask you the same thing. It's all scheduling, as you know.
Well, you know what? You've done a great job doing a lot of things. And I wanted to say, Mark, I think the fact that you are bringing more than just acupuncture to the table. I love acupuncture, and I love a lot of the acupuncturists that I work with. And we believe in it so much that we even have a full-time acupuncturist that works in our practice now. Love having her because a lot of my patients like her more than they like me now, which is great. She's actually much more than that. And like yourself, and we're going to talk about this because I think there's a lot involved in coaching and with what you do in consultations. She's talking to people about their diets, and she's talking to people about what foods are good for them. Please tell us, like, when someone comes and sees you in person, how do you kind of walk people through the entire process of the consultation and what you do?
Yeah, when you were saying that, it got me thinking of a woman I was just talking to this week, and so I'll kind of frame it in the sense of what that conversation was like and how that consultation and visit was like. Someone comes in and we want to understand their health overall, not just how they're feeling physically, but how they're feeling mentally, emotionally, sometimes spiritually, depending on the individual. We want to understand all aspects of their life so we can hopefully influence any one of those areas that we think might be contributing to whatever struggles they've been going through. So we ask, my patients often joke that they need to sit down with a cup of tea and a lot of time to fill out our paperwork because it's very long and detailed, and they often joke that they've never been asked the questions that we ask because we do want that sort of detail and intricacy to be able to make our diagnosis and know how to support them. And that's exactly what Chinese medicine does. It's really trying to get to the root of these issues with these intricate and detailed questions, and that's why we ask them. But we might have long conversations not only about their health and digestive system, their bowel movements, but diet. I'll have whole long hour visits just in depth on what they're eating, how many calories they're taking in, what sort of diet they should or shouldn't be doing, which fad diet they are doing that they shouldn't be doing, those sorts of things. And just this week, that woman I had mentioned, we had probably a 35-minute conversation just on her fear of what it will be like to be a parent. She was so scared, but she hadn't really voiced it before. And I don't even remember how it came up initially in the conversation, but we were having just a whole conversation about her fear behind how it's going to change her life and her relationship with her partner. So we will go there when necessary and when we need to. We're not therapists. So, there is a line that we won't cross. And certainly at times, and even in that conversation, I did say, I thought she needed to go and have some sessions with a therapist to dive deeper into this topic, but we were at least able to scratch the surface. So we really want to understand the person that we're working with in all ways so that we can really come up with a more comprehensive plan to support them and try to meet them where they're at.
I like that a lot. And one of the things, I really love acupuncture. And the main reason that I like acupuncture, because I don't know every single thing that it does to the body, physically and biologically. But I think when you go to a good acupuncturist and you go into that zone, you fall asleep, when you wake up and you are completely reset and calm, that is why I send patients to acupuncture. So I have once in a while a patient that's like, I hate the needles. I get the entire time I'm there, I'm like shaking and I have anxiety. I'm like, then acupuncture is not for you.
That's right. That's right. And I say that to patients as well. Yeah, because it's not for everybody.
No, it's not for everybody. But I think the right acupuncturist can calm and keep almost anyone calm and make them really feel energized and reset the way that they should. But you said some important things that I want to touch on. So you try to learn a lot about someone's life because acupuncture is great. The purpose of resetting you, bringing more blood flow to the organs that really need it, really super important. But I think some of the things that you are discussing with people, like your diet, what foods you need to have. Today, I was trying to explain to the patient hot and cold foods. And I'm telling her it has nothing to do with temperature. So she's like, well, you're obviously crazy, Dr. Ghadir. Okay, Mark, I'm going to give you the opportunity of trying to explain, because I come from a Middle Eastern background, that from when I was like 4 years old running around, I just remember my grandmother and my aunt being like, eat dates or eat nuts. These things are good. They'll warm you up. You'll have good kids later. I mean, these are things that I've heard my entire life. So I go into an embryo transfer and I'm telling my patients, you have to have a handful of nuts and a few dates. And if you want to do the pineapple thing that everyone else is saying to do, just do that too. And they're like, okay, dates? I haven't had a date my whole life, but I will do it now. So can you please shed some light in the way that you know how about the hot and the cold foods?
I love how you incorporated it and where that went. It brought a big smile to my face. Look, in Chinese medicine, and I do think in other cultures as well, but in Chinese medicine, every food has multiple properties, and they are going to be categorized as either typically hot, cold, or neutral. And so when someone is making those recommendations, we make those recommendations primarily because the thought in Chinese medicine is that we want the uterus to stay warm. And so with that, we want warm foods, easy to digest foods, especially what you're talking about, in the luteal phase or after a transfer. We want you to have warm, easy to digest foods, and things that are cold in nature and also cold in temperature. Those things don't have to be one and the same, but we are talking about both of those things as well. We want to try to avoid. So you would probably not have, and we wouldn't recommend a lot of salads during that time. Although, today is a really hot day in Southern California. So someone might say, well, could I have a salad today? And so then I would say, well, you can, but maybe let's pair that with a warm tea or a nice warm bowl of soup to pair that with, right? So that we keep that easier to digest and warm. But then it's also with the quality of the food. So you were mentioning nuts. Walnuts are warmer in nature and they tend to warm us up.
Walnuts compared to all other nuts?
Yeah, like cashews are more cooling.
Oh, I didn't know that. I would tell people to have a handful of nuts.
Yeah, so walnuts more specifically. Yeah.
Walnuts had more omegas in them, and that's why I was recommending walnuts. But sometimes if I just say any nuts if you don't have walnuts around.
Yeah, and most people don't have a lot of walnuts around, but that's the other reason why you would do it as well.
That's the Persian. Then you have those in your pantry right now. Okay.
That's true. Middle Eastern communities absolutely have nuts and dates in almost every pantry.
We have like 20 kinds of nuts and like 6 categories of dates. Okay. That's how it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I want a snack. I'm like, what nut am I feeling right now? And which kind of dates do I want? I have dates in my little refrigerator in my office because when 2 o'clock comes around, I have gotten in my old age addicted to having a cup of tea and a really good date.
Oh, you fit right. Your parents would be very happy. You fit right in.
Yes, very happy and fertile. So one or the other. So I really one day want to just do a talk just about these foods because I think there's so much involved. I want to ask you a question. So when we were having about 20 to 30% of our practice coming from mainland China, we had about 9 Chinese coordinators that worked with us. And one day, one of them looked at me and said, Dr. Ghadir, when I moved to this country, I thought everyone was crazy. Who eats cold lettuce? She said, in my life, I've never had a cold piece of lettuce. And she would microwave her lettuce when she got to the office before she ate it. For lunchtime, if it was part of her daily food. So I just want to ask this cold. I noticed something really interesting. The cold that comes with salads and lettuce, and I have a lot of patients that's basically all they eat, especially in Southern California.
Yeah.
How does that affect you in a negative way when trying to conceive?
So cold in general contracts and decreases circulation. It's also much harder to digest typically. So that's in Chinese culture, you'll very rarely see a real salad, like a salad that we eat here. They will have their equivalent of a salad is a very small bowl of like thinly sliced carrots, daikon, and maybe some cucumber. But on the flip side, they will add, rice wine vinegar and probably some pepper to it to warm it up a little bit and make it easier to digest. But that's the equivalent. If it's a really hot day or you're having a lot of spicy food, that's what they'll serve you. And that's what they think of as salad. So it doesn't surprise me that she was microwaving her lettuce as much as that makes me laugh.
Yeah, no, that's actually so interesting because the biggest, there was no salad. All the meals that I ever had in China ended with the vegetables being brought in at the end of the meal, and also always warm.
Yeah, always warm, slightly steamed or sauteed or something like that.
And I have a friend of mine that went to this health clinic in Austria, and I had absolutely no idea until right now when you said this, that it is hard to digest like lettuce and salads. I thought, to be honest, that would be a very easily digestible food, but I didn't realize that you just said that it's very, very hard to digest. And my friend said in that clinic, it's one of the number one health clinics in all of Europe that people pay thousands of dollars to go to for like a week at a time. They've told them you never have salad at night.
Yeah, right. You have it earlier in the day, so it gives you some time to digest. Maybe it's just a small part of the meal. It's not the whole part of the meal. It's not the meal, right? Yeah. And anytime I have patients who really want to have salads, then I'm talking to them about, okay, well, let's add some ginger to the salad. Let's add garlic and pepper to warm it up and make it easier to digest because your body's got to heat that up to body temperature to start to digest it.
I think this is this is now honestly crazy and maybe TMI. Last week, one night I had a gigantic salad for dinner, and I did not sleep the entire night. And
Yeah. And how late did you have it?
Probably at like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah. So you can have it earlier, 5, 4.
Learning at the speed of light right now. This is incredible. But let's talk a little bit more about what's involved when you coach someone, because not everyone is lucky enough to have a person like you kind of with them during the entire process of fertility. I see right behind you, for those people that can't see but are just listening because it is a podcast, there's a huge sign that says hope. One of my favorite words in this entire journey is the word hope. One of my patients bought me a gift once. It said Dr. Shahin Ghadir, and right below it, it says the ambassador of hope. And
I love it.
Office, and I stare at it. It's in the windowsill, and I love it. And I love the fact that there's only one word, and there's one thing there behind you, and it says the word hope. What do you do when it comes to coaching that's effective and you feel truly helps your patients?
Well, one thing is give them hope, and that's why that sign is there. But it really just trying to understand where they're coming from, and hopefully maybe give them a different perspective on what they've been going through. I'm sure when you work with couples, they've been to how many other clinics that they've worked with, and tried all sorts of different things and haven't gotten the results. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding that right combination, that right protocol, that right doctor who's going to listen and be compassionate and work with you. And so my goal is really to first and foremost listen, and be there for them, but also try to understand where they need to go and help them recognize that. It's not easy to be told whether you need donor or we need to move forward with IVF or IUI, because no one starts the fertility process wanting to have children. I can't say no one, because I do know a couple, but most people don't start off the fertility process saying, yes, I want to start with IVF. They say, okay, I want to start the old fashioned way at home in the bed. Right. And so to help them recognize what are the best options for them, and then also recognizing what time frame we have. I think that often gets lost as well. Just understanding how many children we want to have, in what time frame, when do we need to start to make some of those decisions. All of those things start to get complicated.
Too few people ever address how many kids you want to have. It's going to come, if you're doing a consultation with me, I promise you within the first 2 minutes of talking to me, that question is going to be answered, because too many people do not ever ask the entire time they're talking to their doctor or discuss, I want to have 4 kids, doc. I am now 37 years old, but my goal is to have 4 kids, not 1. So right. You give a 37-year-old instructions to do artificial insemination, and she's going to get pregnant that next month and come back at 38 with her baby. And at 40, 41, start again. Her dream of 4 kids is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. But on the flip side, interesting, I have had many couples who have had that goal of, and 4 was for both of them was the 4. They want these 4 children. So they're constantly banking, and they're never moving forward with an embryo transfer. And I've seen that work against them in those situations. And so it's just trying to balance all of those things, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's where a coach comes into play, someone who understands and sees both sides. How do you work with the actual physician? So I'm just very curious, because I'm just like right now very jealous, and I wish I had a Dr. Sklar that works in my office and right next to us. But I'm just curious, how is your relationship with people's physicians? How do you pick who you work with well? And I'm just curious how you navigate that entire process.
So I try not to, I don't demand or dictate what clinic they need to work with or what physician they need to work with. If they ask, if they haven't had good responses someplace and they feel like they need to switch, then we'll have that conversation based on where they're located and what they're, does it need to be local? Are they willing to travel? All of those different questions. But in terms of communicating with their physicians, if I know them, then I'll just communicate directly with them. If I don't know them, then, there's a little bit of in between that tends to happen depending on the circumstances. But I also feel like I'm not there to change what the physician is trying to do. I'm really there to support the couple in their process and really empower them with knowledge and understanding of potentially options that they have. But I'm not there to really dictate how that protocol is going to happen. But couples do ask those questions. Depending on the circumstances, we might have to have a longer conversation about that. But if they're really looking for somebody and they need to switch, or they've never started IVF and they're looking for someone, that's really where we'll dive into what options they have and where can they go, and what might be the best situation for them.
It's interesting because Mark is located in San Diego, and we have a lot of patients that come to my clinic in LA from San Diego. So I always found that as a gigantic compliment for someone to go out of their way to do that, to come and see me, which is really nice. If someone, there's a couple of questions I don't want to forget to ask. People always ask me, when should I start acupuncture? How often should I do acupuncture? I'm very curious what your answer to that question is.
Yeah. So I think the easier answer is when they should start. So if they're already thinking about it, I would say they should start. The sooner the better, because our medicine just takes a little bit longer to be effective. The research around specifically acupuncture, and not condition specific, but just acupuncture in conjunction with IVF, we want a minimum of 12 visits. And so if it's easier the longer we have, so that it's once a week. If someone comes to me and this happens regularly, I've got 2 weeks or 3 weeks until my retrieval or transfer. Then we're trying to pick up and speed that process up, which is not always easy for anybody scheduling wise. So I think the longer, the more time we have, the better. And then so in general, I do say I try to work with them and say once a week. There are certain conditions that the research does really speak very clearly that it should be multiple times a week, like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. The research was pretty dramatic to show that we can help regulate cycles and their hormones with 2 to 3 times a week. I try to keep it at 2. And then, sometimes when they're in protocol, in stim, that might be for those let's just say 2-week time period. That will be a time where I typically say, let's see you twice a week during that time.
Okay, good. So I generally say twice a week. I think that for some people, like if they're working and they have other obligations in life, 3 times a week can be much.
Hard, yeah.
And and also I think it has to be looked at every single person. If you're like 44 years old and someone says, well, we need to see you for 3 months before, and I've seen that happen before, where people have taken like a 3-month period to do acupuncture. And I think that you got to use your judgment, and time is also of the essence for many of our population.
We got to balance all those things out, right? I mean, it can't be so structured for everybody, because we're all unique and need and have different circumstances.
What about herbs? So lots of patients ask me and say, my acupuncturist has all these herbs that I should be taking. Some of them taste like mud. Some of them are in my tea. Some of them are. So I've had the mud. It made me sleep so well. And when I say mud, there's these teas that are really strong, and it's literally like, it looks like dirt, but I took it because I was having a hard time sleeping, and becoming one of the biggest challenges of my life these days. So it worked out really well. What do you recommend, and when do you recommend herbs?
So I think herbs can be really powerful. And when we really need to change something physically in the body, anything that's going to help support hormone regulation, really trying to have a big physiological impact, then that's where I do think herbs can be amazing. If we have time, then I do like to incorporate herbs. If it's something new, like someone says, oh, I'm in the middle of a stimulation cycle, should I add my herbs now? No, like that is not the time to add something new in that situation. And often I will take patients off of herbs when they start stimulation especially if it's their first cycle, because we just don't know. We want to minimize variables, and we don't know how herbs impact some of these things because it's too difficult to do research on that. There are some doctors that are really comfortable with me giving herbs. And so they just said, well, if Mark gave it, it's fine. But I'm still, I still try to balance that out. I think we've got to just be mindful of all of that and recognize that these are not benign substances. And, just as they can have a positive impact, they can have a negative impact. And we need to recognize that.
Yeah, it's just like I've realized some herbs that I like to take daily. I also get concerned that not every herb affects every single patient in the same exact way.
That's correct. It doesn't. I can give a formula that I thought was perfect for this specific situation or diagnosis, and I can give it to somebody else. It works great. And the next person, it doesn't work out because their underlying constitution is a little bit different, which is really coming back to the uniqueness of Chinese medicine, really doing a proper diagnosis so that you know what herbs to give.
What about for men? For years and years, we just ignored the male partner in the world of fertility and it's all the female. But now that more and more research is showing that 40% of infertility can be caused from the male side, and with all of the environmental and all of the age factors that are there for the male partners, what do you think about that? And what would you recommend to help males do better with sperm quality, since every research is showing that male sperm quality is going down the drain?
Yeah, I think this is a huge concern for us moving forward, and I'm glad it's getting a little bit of news and that hopefully men are taking a little bit more responsibility for their actions, although I don't quite see it shifting dramatically yet, but hopefully it will soon. But yeah, this is a big issue. I think the wonderful thing about this situation, I think there's a lot that can be done. And I think there's a lot that men can do and take on their own shoulders to really see change. And that comes down to a lot of the basics, because if we're not sleeping well, if we're overworked, if we're very stressed and we're not eating well and we're on the go constantly, that's going to have an impact. So those things need to shift. And it's not that there's not supplements or herbs that we can give, but you're going to need a lot more of those, and it's going to take longer to have an effect if we're not doing some of the foundational things that I know everybody should be doing. So for all the men out there, when you look at your wives and or partners, and they're doing, very strict with their diet and they're eating all these things that you look at them and you think they're crazy, we need to start to take some of those things ourselves and start to look at that, because that is something we need to be doing. And alcohol consumption needs to be moderated. All these things that we know inherently, when we assess our own lives, we know what could use a little bit more support. Those are things that we absolutely need to be addressing and not ignoring.
100%. I'm looking at this sheet, Mark, that just summarizes a few little things about you. There's like 80 topics in the world of fertility and health that you have successfully helped people in, and I'm just beyond impressed. Every time I talk to you, especially today, I learned so much. I want to thank you so much for being here. If someone wants to learn more, follow you or do a consultation, what is the best way for them to find you?
Well, the best way to see me and learn more about me is my YouTube channel, Fertility TV. But other than that, you can go to either one of my websites, marksklar.com, or if you're in San Diego, then reproductivewellness.com.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank you. It is truly a pleasure. And I can't tell you how much I personally learned just talking to you during this podcast. And I hope that our audience got the same out of it, which I'm 100% sure that they did. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Dr. Sklar, for being here with us today. I can't wait to be able to do this again with you, and hopefully soon. And for everyone who's listening, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Mark, I love that.